that would probably give us some insight into whether we can actually replicate these kind of systems. But unfortunately, due to this COVID outbreak, we were not able to deploy the bicycles as yet. And so we thought we were carrying out some preliminary research work. We are trying to simulate some data sets to see the performance of such bike sharing systems in a situation where the demand is not very high. So till the time that we are not able to run the bikes, we thought that it's a good idea to connect our peers and to get to know from the industry experts what are their concerns at the moment, and also what they feel about such kind of a model, where we want to run e-bike sharing services in rural and semi-urban areas. The viability of that from your point of view, how you look at it, whether it's something that we adopt or not. So that's the purpose of our meeting here today. And let's start the discussion now. First of all, I will just go through the 4 broad points which I had circulated yesterday also. Yeah. Anil, where is it? Just a minute. Yeah. Okay. So, those 4 broad points which I had separated yesterday. First thing that we would like to hear from our guests today, the panelists today, is about the impact of access restrictions. I mean, in these times, we have a scenario where the bicycles may not be accessible to a lot of people who would like to use them. Then there would be scenarios where it's not possible to travel all across the city. In these kind of situations, what is the take of our panelists on that? How are they thinking about managing the micromobility businesses? What is the prospect of micromobility businesses? What new innovation would you like to think of? So let's start with that, I would say. So I would first call upon Aniket. On this point, could you say a few things? What are the kind of innovations that you are thinking of regarding the impact of access restrictions?
Yes, definitely, Premji. So the thing is, yes, the opportunities and everything else is already around zero. So what I say is the operations and the service operations throughout the fleet area, like and we have operations in Thane and Raipur. The activities and the operational activities are totally down to zero. And when it comes to containment zone, which have been identified, where the cases have been identified, actually, the municipalities and the local administration have totally isolated those pockets. But the problem is, previous station is actually segregated around the city to cover it, to provide it thorough connectivity for a user. So generally, what happens in a pocket where the cases have been identified, so those pockets have been totally isolated from the rest of the cities, and the movement to those places have been totally restricted. So the thing is, since the lockdown is opening up, I see there will be a new guidelines will be coming up with from the health authorities and the local governments, where those pockets will be left aside and the rest of the cities will be opened up. And from the operator perspective and from the operation side, I can say we will be thinking on providing the satellite station soon, where we have mobile stations placed at some localities outside the containment zone, where these cases have been identified, and to provide actual connectivity from the rest of the stations. Further, as I can say, we have operations in Raipur as well. So I see there will be a guideline coming up soon for the Raipur to be opening up by by second week or so next month, and that's it. So as of now, there will be a subscription plan that we will be planning soon. So there is another subscription plan that might be coming in where we will be planning on leasing the cycle for about a week or so with the operator, since the battery is there in the bicycle. Since we have 50-50 ratio of e-bike and the normal cycle, so e-bikes can be rented out to the user for about 4 or 5 days since the battery lasts. Till then, and we'll be coming up with new subscription plans, and there will be a lot of rework have to be done on the operation side as well. And since there are a lot of workers we have to keep them paying as well. So there is a lot of revenue generation activities that we will be doing post lockdown, and a lot of campaign will be coming in.
Definitely for the technical issues, and in fact, that's the second point. We will come back to that. The second point,
Yes, sir.
the technical issues, at the moment which you are encountering, and what you would like to do about it. So we'll just carry this forward about the impact of access restrictions. I would just request Mr. Jain now to share his views regarding, sir, these kind of access restrictions which are in place.
Sure,
How
sir.
does it impact the business?
Due to COVID-19 restrictions, service providers and users both faced a big problem. After lockdown 3.0, life got some space to move, but only few things become operational. Of course, public bicycle sharing was not one of them. So when it came to our knowledge that now we have to live with COVID-19 and lockdown 4.0, most of the service providers came out with some solution, innovative ideas to serve their customers, keeping all restrictions in mind carefully. Despite of all these things, we felt that users are not ready to use public bicycle share service. Being service provider is being a service provider, it's our duty to provide safe and secure ride to our customers. Regular sanitation of cycles and sanitation and visible mark of social distancing on stations. These two things must be our habits in future. During lockdown, sharing service may play a key role in health and social distancing, especially for all those people depends on public or shared transport for work and fitness. So basically, the one solution we find out for this time, the only system is hiring for a long tenure. The people are not coming out for a short term and sharing the cycle time to time. We can offer the cycle for longer tenure. So that was the best solution, and we are offering to our customers. They can take the cycle for a long period, for a week or a month, on a very reasonable price, so they can afford the rent of that cycle. And we are maintaining the maintenance or repair and maintenance we are taking at our own. If they feel some kind of a maintenance is required, they replace the cycle. They drop the cycle at our stand, and they can take another cycle in lieu of that. So the people can make the chain of this type of things. So we strongly recommend that during this period, we should provide the cycles for a longer tenure. We could not compel the user to use the cycles which is used very regularly, very frequently by the other users. So no one is going to take the danger of corona. That cycle was not sanitized, and the people who is dealing it there is properly not infected. We cannot assure him. So this is the only solution we find, that the longer tenure can be a solution for this.
Okay. So now on that theme, coming to Gargi now, what are your views on this? How is Yulu looking at this?
So talking about the impact of access restriction, yes. So like in all the cities that we operate in, hello, am I audible?
Yes.
So in all the cities that we are operational in, all the cities have faced the same issue. But Maharashtra is still, in the process of battling with the scenario. But in Karnataka right now, the things are looking better. So the things are opening. There are more vehicles flying on the road. There are more offices that are operating, and hence we have started resuming the business here. So what we have basically done is on the app, if you look at the new app, you can find the timestamp like when the bike was last sanitized. So based on your comfort and everything, you can use the bike. So it shows the exact timestamp if it was sanitized half an hour ago or maybe 1 hour ago or 2 hours ago. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to sanitize, the bikes in a duration of 2 hours, because what we expect is for the bikes that we have deployed on road, we are expecting a ride to happen in a 2 hours time. So basically, what we are trying to do is sanitize a bike after every single ride. So this is the thing that we are doing right now. And yes, about the restrictions. So during the lockdown process, we had to pull out all the bikes from the streets and put it to a safer place, so that people are not curious, and also that we don't want bikes being available and people trying to use it and then not being able to use it. So we were in total sync with what the government wanted, that the people stay indoors, people stay quarantined, and they are not out on the streets. So we were in total support of it, and that's why we did that. So as of now, where the business has started resuming, so we have also started resuming the businesses for the people's convenience.
Okay. Mr. Srivastav, now coming to you.
Yeah, sure. So the access restrictions of the bicycles and the stations for the users. So what happens whenever we plan for any of the station in any of the cities? So there are certain things which we take care while planning itself. So one is that we identify the places which are very, very thickly populated residential area as well as commercial area. And broader classifications, one is called utility area, one is called recreational area. So basically, these two things are the main thing which we keep it in mind. So after the restriction, COVID restriction, the recreational stations were totally stopped. Utility stations were also stopped, but there is a way where we can open it and people can start using it. Second, there are some stations where people were really not able to go because they were falling into the red zone. So even if I open my station, people are not going to take the bikes because they are guarded by people. They can't even reach to the station. So that is a very reason for it. So access is not an issue as long as the government opens the permission about all these things. So the problem is the riders are not really coming out to take any kind of risk. So they see a threat in everything. Even if to ride the bicycles, to go somewhere. So that is the main thing. And what happens in otherwise also, even if the COVID situation was not there. So what we do every 3 to 6 months, we take out the data of the bicycles, taken from a station. So whichever data show as the lowest usage. So let us say a station is taking only 3 to 4 bikes per day. So what happens? It comes into my last preference in my Excel sheet. So again, we go to the government because smart bike projects are mainly, through the contract. What happen? And we go back to the place something else. We go to a new station, we start a business. So this is how we do it. These everything's keep curtailed with the proper planning. So this is my take and Smart Bike's take on this.
Okay, so regular monitoring of this thing. So coming now to Andy. So what are your views on this?
Yeah, hey guys. So definitely, as a lot of the other panelists mentioned, the entire country was under lockdown for a very long time. For past, let's say, 10 days or a couple of weeks, it has started opening up to a certain extent in partial phases across India. Definitely, few cities have fared better than others. Being in the shared mobility space, face exactly the same problems over bikes or any factor that we have is when the paranoia of a threat is maximum in the public, there is a need for validation of how exactly are you sanitizing and how do I even trust you, right, as a service provider. So we are also on the same phase. In fact, soon you will see the exact video of sanitation available to the user on each of these individual assets that we have. Definitely, it makes a lot much more sense to show all of this up in terms of technology investments that we have on cars versus any other form factor, because the average transaction value is far higher there. But even on an electric bike, which is versus normal bikes, the transaction values are slightly higher there. It makes a lot of sense for us to ensure that between every booking, you touch these assets and sanitize them fully, and give the validation to the end consumers. Without that, we don't see how just making a statement that I have sanitized this asset at a particular time point, or giving them a safety badge, or you see this all across, right? Ola, Uber, Zomato, Swiggy, food deliveries, all of them, they are trying to do this. But I, as an individual customer, will never go by just you saying that to me, right? I actually want to see that. I actually want to feel that, right? So that is what our endeavor has been, to ensure that as the restrictions lift and the subdued demand slightly kicks off, definitely we are seeing that on a self-drive mode, a lot much more interest is there in terms of demand, especially because public transportation is not going to pick up, which means that private players have to play this role of connecting slightly longer distances for people. Which means that the form factor that we have chosen, which is the electric bike, which can serve even like 20-25 kilometers, is perfect for the given situation for in-city use cases, right? So from the impact of the restriction in itself, we see that there is a silver lining in all of this for businesses when it comes to standing true on the service expectations of the customers. So till now, whatever investments have done, you will have to do a one-up now. You'll have to up your ante and go farther, a lot much more, placing yourself as the end user. I am a father of 2 kids. And if I don't trust the service myself, obviously nobody else is going to trust that, right? That is how we see the impact of restrictions playing a role in shifting how the businesses see the services that they're going to provide.
Okay. So, Dr. Fishman, now coming back to you, our panelists have shared their views on the first agenda point, impact of access restrictions. So now, what do you feel after hearing this? With your experiences of what is happening in Australia and your experience from ongoing research, what do you feel? What are the things that we should take from this if you want to prepare a research agenda for the future?
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with anything that's been said so far, and in many cases, because your operators, you are much closer to the ground and you are understanding what needs to happen to be consistent with regulations, and you're also seeing what the public's response is to infection control and the response in terms of using your bikes where they're available. So I don't think there's really anything that can substitute for that experience, but what we're seeing in Australia is that the bikes have been taken off the streets in most cases, and because our wages are quite a bit higher than in India, it has meant that it's not possible from an economic perspective to have people cleaning bikes, sanitizing bikes in between each trip. So that's not economically possible for us to do that. And that's part of the reason why they've been taken off the street. I think one of the really important things here is that whilst there's going to be a lot of apprehension about trying to get on a bike that somebody has used earlier that day, as restrictions start to ease, I think people will start to weigh up the difference between what's the infection risk of using a bike versus what's the infection risk of using public transport. And because public transport carries so many more people every day into the busy commercial hearts of cities, there's actually a real opportunity to try and draw some of those many millions of people that used to get a train or a bus onto a bike share or an e-scooter. It might be things like sending out a small canister of sanitizer to people, so a branded small bottle, it might cost $1 or something, to give people the assurance that even if they can't be sure that the bike was clean when they started, at least if they've got some sanitizer, they can sanitize the handlebars themselves. And that might give them the confidence to know that it was definitely done because they did it themselves. So that might be one option. But look, I think that at the moment, it's one of those situations. I don't know what the lockdown regulations are in different Indian cities, but I think we're at a point where we're just waiting until this is eased up a little bit. And then once that happens, it may well be the case that your bikes and e-scooters are busier than they were before COVID-19, as more people start to look for e-bikes and e-scooters as an alternative to getting on very crowded public transport, where it's not just the common surfaces like handlebar rails and those sorts of things, but also the air that people are breathing. And that is something that I think that fear will drive people towards individual transport. And because of the lower space consumption of e-scooters and e-bikes, they'll be looking to that. I really agree with a lot of the comments about moving towards a monthly subscription. So it's much better to have your bikes used at a low rate, at a low cost, on a monthly basis by one user than it is to have them locked up in a warehouse. So if it's a choice between locking up 10,000 bikes in a warehouse and not earning any money versus earning a little bit of money by having your members be able to subscribe a bike out and keep it in their home. So it could be e-scooters are more popular for that because you can put an e-scooter in more places. It doesn't take up as much room. But I think the subscription model is something that makes a lot of sense in the time of COVID-19.
Okay. Just one thing on this. My take on this, something I'm really curious to know. As a School of Planning, we have a focus on spatial aspects. That is why I had brought up this particular agenda point. First thing, impact of access restrictions. What comes to my mind is that are any of you thinking of integrating into your apps, like go-to areas or no-go areas, so that people, when you're looking around for a bike as a customer, you get to know, in advance that, okay, there are some restrictions and it's not possible for you to access a bike in some place, or if some places are, outside the, say they're close to biking operations. So you probably cannot go and park it there. If it's a dock system, so you cannot go and park it there. Okay, so that kind of advanced information, is there something on that? And any one of you thinking about that?
No, basically, we are connecting through the MRTS, MMTS, or the metro stations, wherever. Currently these are all probably, stopped for everybody. So once they start, so they'll be very, very popular. This is how we planned it. But yeah, the feeder station, which are into your colonies and which are into your famous parks and other places, those can be restricted very well. So, those can be used very well once the government gives us permission to run the bicycles. So the only issue is that the regulation is, regulation has told us not to use the bicycles because of certain issues. This is one. And second, today we are so much scared to use anything. We don't know what is going to happen. The moment I touch my handle, or if I try to set, adjust my saddle, so I don't know what is going to catch me. So that is the main threat we are facing. But otherwise, by and large, in a network of let us say a network of 500 stations in Chennai, so there will be, good reach of stations, and there will be proper connectivity of the transports also. The main thing is that the network plays a main role. And while choosing, whenever we do the OND survey or whatever we do, so this needs to be done properly. And every 3 months or 6 months, we need to revisit the stations on the popularity of the rides. And we should always change our stance with the help of government if it is a tender one project like ours. So that plays good. That helps us. And at the same time, as Mr. Fishman said, keeping all the bikes in your assembly plant or in a warehouse and earning zero, and you can always give us some offer of some kind of freebies to the customer so that we earn something. I think if not, we get a fraction of operation cost. That should be done. But the only thing is that once the government says, yeah, everything is open. So there is something called lockdown 5.0 and the restrictions are open on the public bicycle sharing system. So then how it helps. And but still, I mean, even after that, we have a challenge that whether they are going to use it or not. So that is the big question mark at this moment.
So to add to it, what Yulu is doing here is like we have other participants also who are going ahead with the long-term rental plan. So we too are going ahead with the long-term rental plan. There was a survey which was taken up by our users, and what we observed that is around 22 to 25% of the users are still not comfortable because they have that COVID fear in their mind, right? So they preferred the long-term rental plan wherein a bike we deliver to them, they take care of the bike, and the operations will be done by us. So basically the battery swapping and everything would be done by us, but the vehicle would be assigned to one particular person. So this is one thing that we are doing. And the second thing is like you asked, like if there is a station where the person does not want to park the bike or cannot basically park the bike, but wants to take it elsewhere to his home maybe and keep it safe. So Yulu also has a feature of pausing your ride. So you can pause the ride, you can select the time duration, like for what duration you want to pause the ride. If you want to pause it for an entire night, you can do that as well. And using the same bike, maybe you can do the next commute in the morning. So this is something that we are doing, yes.
Just coming to Aniket now on the same point, the access restrictions and what we are discussing now, I just saw on your portal this interesting thing that you claim to be a hybrid, you claim to have this hybrid kind of operations where dock systems and dockless systems are combined. So there's an option of switching from, depending on the situation, you can also switch to a dockless system. So can you say something on that? Whether it's working and how it can be address this point?
Yes, Premjit ji. So the thing is, we at Parksys and Coolites, we have a hybrid model where the cycles are basically positioned at the station, but also they have a feature of pausing your ride to any other point outside the station. So what we have came up with is there is a lock that we have designed entirely in the in-house. That lock can be used as a dockless and as well as for the dock based bicycle training systems. So let's suppose if any station is out of any slot to park the bicycle. So once the user reach out to that station, he can also end his ride by locking that particular cycle there outside the station as well. And that same feature can be used for any place outside the fleet area, not outside the fleet area, but outside the station and the coverage area, where we used to charge, where we have charged user for not doing that thing actually. So the thing is, it is based on the municipalities who come up with any kind of a project. Let's suppose municipality A and municipality B. So they both have a different kind of a model where they want a dock-based bicycle sharing system, and other one wants a dockless kind of a model. What happens with the Pune earlier? So there are both the solution are there in the one system. And coming to the rental model, what we say. So there is actually a challenge coming up with that thing. So I see the new bikes and the batteries have a long range as well as the battery lasts for around 4 to 5 days on approx of 45 to 50 kilometers on an average range. Let's suppose a user drives bicycle like on a daily average like around 8 to 10 kilometers on an e-bike. So still we have a 4 to 5 days of buffer where we can rent out the cycles to that particular user and charge considerable amount, not heavy, sorry, considerable amount. And it also depends on subscription model. And also subscription will be decided on a mutual consent where the purchasing power parity will also be coming into the play here, where we have seen a lot of job losses and a lot of things happened during these last 2 months. And suppose people will be coming out and using the personal transport and preferring not to go for the public thing. The best proxy here will be the e-bike and the electric infrastructure here. So yes, I see there will be a huge gap up, not the gap up thing coming up, but there will be a huge demand coming in the short run with the electric infrastructure as well. So yes, that's it.
Okay. Okay. So now, just any of our other speakers, would you like to stay on this point and something more that you would like to say?
Yeah, Atul Jain, this side. Uh, Actually, we have worked on this since March 23rd because we did not rent out even a single cycle till today. So we were trying to change the scenario. How can we rent out these cycles? What is the options can we can offer to the customers or riders? So we are updating our application through making this kind of these are the stations. This is the red zone, this is the green zone. In red zone you can't take the cycle, you can't drop the cycle. And on the similar way we are mentioning the green zones, so the commuter can come to know the where is the green zone we can take the cycle and we can where we can drop the cycles. So green zone means that he can move simultaneously on the road. Green zone will depend on the situation of the roads, restrictions. These roads are free to move on that cycle. We are also trying to give the routes on which they can play the cycles. So some kind of these things we are trying to implement in our application. That is up to in next month, up to 2nd or 3rd June, we are going to implement all these things on with along with the new tariff of long tenure hiring system.
That's great, sir. That's great. That is exactly what I was thinking of. So you are
Yes.
integrating this into your app at the moment, right?
Yes, yes. Right now we are working on that, and it will be launched within a week. Next 2 3 days, we will be able to launch that.
uh, how are you integrating this data? I mean, regarding the zoning, this existence of green zones and red zones, how are you, from where are you taking this? There is some,
Actually, we are using the Arogya Setu application where we are getting all the information regarding red zones, green zones, orange zones, containment zones. So we are having the complete data in respect of that. So we can segregate all the data and we are implementing in that our application.
yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Actually,
Sri.
we are also not operating in OL Delhi. So we are operating in very limited area. So we can find out the red zone, green zone very easily through Arogya Setu application.
Okay. So, shall I move on to our next broad thematic point? With the permission of all our panelists. So, in fact, some of the things have come into discussion already. The second point which I had on the agenda was system-related issues. So, where I would have loved to have heard from you about how you're planning to sanitize cycles and how you're planning to handle, unexpected demand surges. I mean, decentralized at some points, whereas at other points, demand has dropped off. So some of the points have already come up, but could you just maybe go over them, or something more you want to add on system-related issues, sir? So I will again start with Aniket. We'll go in that order. So Aniket, about system-related issues, say something like rebalancing of cycles. Okay, if it is a dot system, you need to rebalance, and if there is a, let's say, a variation of demand in different parts of the city, how do you go about it? Is that a big challenge?
Yes. So taking an example from last 2 months, the thing is, whatever we have learned in last 2 months, the learning will be there with us with lifetime. And there is this is just where the sanitization and the cleaning up of the cycles play a major role coming up in the next 6 months down the line. So I still see the global outlook is very positive for that, and be up in next 6 months to 8 months or whatever so it may be. So there is always people will be cautious about going out and doing the job. So I see operators will have to rework on subscription plan and have to consider consumer buying power first. And mobile stations that we are already working on is the best option for the cities where there are more than 3 containment zone and more than 3 containment zones. And with thanks to the hybrid model that we have, we don't get more headache on removing the cycles from that particular station to another mobile station. So that hybrid model helps us in doing that very well. And I see municipalities coming few months down the line will allow the previous operation once the lockdown is lifted. The previous operation will be there for 24/7 and entire 24 hours overnight as well. And I see there is the redistribution thing that you have mentioned here. So yes, there is going to be a little of challenges where we have seen job cuts in our payroll as well. So the thing is, we are going to take them back very soon. So there is total shut in the activities, and the people were totally out of job, and a lot of things happens during this last 2 months. And first thing, yes, the technology side, whatever the hardware and the software side that we were using for last 2 years, there are a lot of disturbance have to be happening once the lockdown is lifted. So we have to take care in a lot of hardware related challenges and the tech side related challenges as well when the people started coming in after 3 or 4 months from now. I don't see there will be a huge demand just after the lockdown is lifted, but in short run there will be huge demand coming up that we have to be ready for it. And also there will be a new stations coming up through the entire city, and expansion of the cities with the municipal corporation will be very benefit. Will be very beneficial for the system and the people for the people. And I see we have came up with a new feature in our application where the people can demand station or request for the station from their locality if there is any space or in the society we have also implemented such kind of system. So we are already discussing with a lot of people earlier where the Hiranandani and a lot of builders that we were working with, and so things are going on. And let's see from the distribution side and from the redistribution side and or everything else, the operation is going to be little slow, but let's see what comes up with the municipal corporations. So let's see. There is a revenue sharing model that we have proposed with the municipal corporations as well. So there will be a little tax benefits and the rebate coming in from the municipality side as well. So let's hope best for that. I'll move on.
Yeah, Nikhil. Thanks for sharing that. Now, Mr. Jain, what are your views, sir, regarding, any other system-related issues which comes to your mind, which needs to be addressed?
Definitely. Actually, we are already working with this dedicated staff to options, and distribution vehicles are there. We are already maintaining these things earlier in last 2, 3, 4 years. So the person who is attending the station, he will sanitize the cycles, as we have assured our commuters that every cycle will be issued after sanitization, and the redistribution will be maintained by our redistribution vehicle operator. So we can manage through the application that where is the cycles are piled up, which station is vacant. So we can manage from the back end, and we can manage this kind of this redistribution management system. So we are also trying to make some changes in application that whatever the cycle has been used last and it was not sanitized, it will be not be able to issued by anyone. It will be restricted until my operator, my attendant will mark it as a sanitized cycles. It has been sanitized. Only after that it will be issued to anyone. Otherwise, it will not be issued. It will become faulty cycle. It will become unsanitized. So any mark will be there. So the commuter will come to know that this cycle cannot be used because it has already been used by some other person. So we are trying to make such type of things practically possible if possible. So we are deputing so many people. It will increase the cost. We are also considering the cost and budget. So how much cost will increase and how much revenue will come in lieu of that. because we think that so much revenue will come, the people will come. I don't think so many people will come and use this cycle services. But later on, after the COVID-19 or parallelly with the COVID-19, when we come to use of this, used to this COVID-19, so we need a separate vehicle instead of shared auto, shared vehicle, share other mode of transport. We need a single solo riding equipments, vehicles to ride to make safe and secure journey. So we need a huge amount of cycles or two-wheelers, e-vehicles. So in that thing, I think if we talk about demand surge, we need to take care of the supply because existing fleet size is not enough to create cater new demands. Most of the operators are depending on the China, and right now the relation with the China is not too good. It's bad day by day. It's going bad day by day. So in this situation, we have to follow our Prime Minister's word: be self-independent, be self-dependent, and promote local. So we are trying. We are tying up with some other agencies to get the things done in India. So cycles can be manufactured. Cycles are available in India, but we are looking for the technology in respect of hardware. Actually, technology is more ample. If there, we are having a very ample technology available in India. A mine of talent in India is there. So we need the hardware. We are also trying to develop hardware in India also. So last 1 year we are working on that, and achievement on that. So we are also launching my own project from the Green Ride. That Green Ride, Green Locks will be there in some time. So in case of technology, we are very much confident, and I can say with great confidence that India is not less in terms of technology, and we should make full use of it. So presently, all working sharing services running on user-friendly application. Here, I would like to suggest it may be wrong. It may be wrong, but I think there must be a one universal application for public bicycle sharing service that will help our commuters a lot. One nation, one app. Any city, any operator. I request to all operators, please do come forward and convey your opinion on this.
Oh, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, definitely. So the thing is, we have already been working with municipalities. We have coming up with a combined application with the authorities. Recently, I say we have partnered with Thane Municipal Corporation for Digi Thane application, where we have provided an open API to them. So the things have been working quite well with them. So let's see. Hope for the well. Will be coming up soon.
Actually, all the operators have to make a roundtable conference on this.
Definitely,
Because,
so we have to.
actually, some operators have their own application. Every operator has their own application, and they are best in their views. So we have to choose one application if they are agreed. All the operators. So actually, we need to facilitate our commuters, our riders. We need to increase our ridership. The ridership will increase. That will increase the faith of this bicycle service sharing service system. So I think it should be coming for.
It's a great point, Mr. Jain. In fact, on that point about indigenization of hardware, this Monday we were having another webinar where we had invited professors from IIT Kharagpur and from the University of Tennessee, the US, and researchers from Sweden also. And in fact, professor from IIT Kharagpur, actually, they are working on indigenized locking systems. So they have developed something already, and they said that it is probably available. The technology is probably available to everybody in India if they would contact them. So I would invite you all to visit our last webinar. I will upload it shortly on our channel. You could probably take a look at it if you're looking for indigenized technologies.
Sure. I will love to be a part of that. Actually, we would like to share our experience and whatever we have achieved till date, we can share with them, so we can bring a very good product, indigenous product.
Sure. Now, coming back to Gargi on this point about the system-related issues, somewhere you mentioned about the time stamping of sanitization. So that is going to be available on that.
Yes, that is available on the Yulu app. So if you are at a Yulu docking station and you're trying to unlock the bicycle, so it would show you the exact timestamp when the bicycle was or the e-bike was last sanitized. So based on that, I mean, we are trying to basically understand the psychology of the person so that it helps us in the business way. Because the current situation is people, even though the buses are currently flying on the streets of Bangalore, so Karnataka has started regaining, right? So it started getting back into the businesses, be it a shared mobility or be it a solo mobility. But as Mr. Jain rightly said, that post the situation, people would be more inclined towards a solo mobility than a shared transport. So even though the proper social distancing is being maintained in the buses and everything, but the inclination would still be on the safety side, and hence people would prefer a solo mobility thing. So this is something that we are keeping in mind. And then again, talking about the issues that were there. So the one issue that we are still facing is the restriction on the timing. So it is the businesses are operational only from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Right. So initially, when before the COVID situation, Yulu operations used to run 24/7. So that for the people who are going to office in the morning, we are able to cater them in the morning, and for that, the preparations have to be done the previous night. Right. But now, given the situation, we are trying our best of how we can try to have that catered. But what we understand is, I guess all the panelists would agree to this. The normal office time is somewhere between 8 to 10:30 or 11 in the morning.
Yeah.
If we are not able to cater that, so that is something that we are working on right now. We are trying to find out different ways and means of how we can cater to that demand. Because if we are not able to get a vehicle to go to the office, then only we will choose the public transport. So this is about Bangalore. With Delhi, I guess, with the Delhi metro not operating, I would say the spine of the Delhi transport is not operating right now. So as the metro revives, we would definitely see more people using this because there are more people who travel by metro. And I just came across a post in the morning today which says, like, with the kind of social distancing that we are expecting post the situation, maybe the metro operations would have to go 7x of what we have currently, which is a very, very, worrisome situation right now. We are all amidst of, we actually don't know like how the situations would be post this. So definitely the stress on solo mobility would be higher. And as Aniket also rightly said that, the opportunity is immense post the situation for all the people who are trying to solve the micromobility thing. And also micromobility would no longer remain a micromobility. So as of now, what we are targeting is the distance of say 2 kilometers to 5 kilometers when we say micromobility. But going forward, people would take it for a longer distance. It could be somewhere between 10 to 12 kilometers or so. So yes, the opportunity is immense and we look forward to it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point that it's probably not going to be something which is preferred for that 5 kilometer range. So probably we're going to see an extension in the range, and that is where another technical thing comes in. I'll just come back to that point regarding e-bikes just a little bit later. I just request Mr. Srivastav for his views on this, sir, regarding the system-related issues.
Yeah, there is a challenge in the system-related issues, yes, because while we do all the sanitization of bicycles and docks and everything, so the main thing that we have to win the customer's mindset. Unless I clean the bike in front of a customer, he is not going to ride the bike. Let it be. As Ms. Gargi said, there will be a timestamp. So the understanding the timestamp and the trusting the timestamp will take some time unless we do it in front of them. And doing it in front of the customer, in front of rider for every station, every bike is, it's a big challenge. So that is the one thing which we need to win over it, the mindset of the customers. And, as far as the physical distancing at the docking stations is concerned, frankly speaking, there haven't been such a demand that we have found so many people at one time at a bicycle station, so that, there is a dire need of making, following a physical distancing at this paper. Yeah, if it happens in the future, which is going to happen when we are very upbeat on that, then probably we'll have to make those circles and the other things where the way they are being done on the airports and the metro stations. We'll have to make those markings so that the customer stands there before he goes ahead to rent the bicycle. So that is what it is. So challenges are there, but we will have to know about it. Distribution is not an issue because we since we work with the government and other people, so we get a special pass to fly in all kinds of zones. So redistribution is not an issue at this moment. That's not a challenge for us.
Mr. Reddy, now sir, on this, you are also leading the operations of Zoom Car, which has, which is into the car rental model. So, and you have Pedal also. So now, while I'm more interested about knowing how Pedal is looking at, the challenges, the system-related challenges, you can also tell us a little bit about the broader, scope of things which you are looking at.
Sure. So let me restrict this to purely operational systems, right? Both technology-wise and options-wise. If I just zoom out, docked versus dockless systems, it has, with overwhelming majority, has been proven all across that dockless is the way to go. Dock systems only make sense where there is some bit of public infra that or public investments that are going into it. Otherwise, for any private player to get into a dock system doesn't make any sense at all, right? Coming back to the dockless systems, fairly systems have been built around it to make them dynamic enough, but not fully, right? So the systems still have their own constraints. For example, what we have been able to do when it comes to e-bikes is create dynamic geo zones. When we say dockless, obviously there are still geographic boundaries where you can park, where you cannot. Very small geo zones of, let's say, less than 200-300 meter circles, right? Spread across, very highly dense. That being said, these can be cropping up very dynamically. The new geographic zone can be without any, let's say, feet on the ground, can be created in the system dynamically. Earlier, people were using them from, let's say, the end station of a public transportation, let's say, call it a bus station or rail station, metro rail station, to the office. But now all of these A to B points have changed, right? Now the new A to B is, let's say, it's their house, their residential complex, to, let's say, a grocery shop, right? So all of these have become dynamic enough for us in the system, right? Now that I know that people are traveling differently, I just crop up these geo zones dynamically. That is A. B is the pricing systems have not evolved enough. Look at any of the player over here, including me, to a very large extent, are very concrete in terms of their pricing systems. Let's say take for example of a YOLO or something, $10 for half an hour is just fixed, right? Irrespective of where you are picking, where you are dropping. Some players like Bounce have tried to build in a little bit of dynamism, saying that, hey, let me try and get the bikes wherever they are parked to a very high demand area by subsidizing this. Let's say I give 50% off or whatever, but it's still not dynamic, right? The place where the point B, where you're trying to get the bikes back, is still fixed, okay? Majority of them are just public transportation endpoints, like metro rail points, right? What we have been building as dynamism in the system, which is not yet live, by the way, but something that we have been building at the back end, is dynamism in the price for every A to B point, okay? So essentially, to draw a parallels, it is like how you have seen the futures trade in crude oil went to negative, right? It went dipped negative, that you are giving money for people to offload crude. It will, same parallels is that you should be okay as an operator to put some buck on the table for people to rebalance it dynamically, your system, right? There is a major operational constraint and cost as well to rebalance all of these bikes from A station to B station. You could possibly use a lot of people on the street to do this rebalancing dynamically by crowdsourcing that, right? None of the players have done effectively all across. Even worldwide, they have not done very well this sort of dynamism in the pricing in itself. They have crowdsourced, let's say, charging the bikes, for example, swapping the bikes, people trying micro entrepreneurship models abroad, that you set up a very small battery charging station and then let people on the street swap these batteries, right? That's not something that Indian service providers have taken to, obviously for a very good reason, that we are a trust deficit society to begin with. But I think this can be very well solved. This system dynamism can be very well solved with pricing mechanisms. Right. This is something that that is relevant for all across. But obviously, this investment is only valid when you have a large scale. And probably the top 2 or 3 players would invest over there than anyone else. For everyone else, probably it makes sense to manage this manually in terms of how do I rebalance this. Dock systems have a completely different system-related constraint, right? That your dock is fixed already, right? And for now to dynamically go and change these docks depending on where the demand is coming in, obviously, much of these docks, you'll again have to put in some effort, manual effort or operationally intensive efforts to remove those docks over there and then move them, right? There are a lot of these dock mechanisms in which they made the docks in itself slightly portable. So that's good for them. But all said and done, I think dockless is the way to go for any private investments or private ventures. Whereas the dock will still be valid for public infra guys, because they would obviously still be willing to put their bucks in the way that they think the city should be planned. Howsoever wrong they go, they still have a notion of having a semblance of control over city and town planning, right? Whereas the private spending is the one which is shaping the demand in terms of transportation. Governments still believe that they are playing the major role, which is not true when it comes to ground reality.
Okay, Mr. Reddy. Wonderful insights there about that. So just come back to 2-3 points, and I will just sound out Dr. Fishman over here. 3 points which kind of intrigued me is first when Gargi was mentioning about the psychological aspects. She was probably pointing out the need to study the psychology of people, whether when you take a look at whether the timestamp really plays that effect on the minds of people, and or are there different different reasons crop up. I mean, people start perceiving things. So it's more about the subjective factors. Actually, that's one of the things Dr. Fishman has considered in his research earlier. I do believe that the subjective factors. He studied the bike sharing systems of Melbourne and Brisbane, and a lot of issues, which are subjective issues, like how do people perceive the systems. It's not just about the pure utility of it. So, Dr. Fishman, what do you think? What are the things that from a psychological point of view that should be studied? We look at it, from the research point of view, a new set of variables. How do we go about it?
Sure. Well, one of the big things to emerge from the research that I did was the importance, and not just the research that I did, but also when I did a literature review and looked at other people's research from around the world on the things that motivate people to use bike share, the key factor is convenience. So if it's not convenient, people won't use it. Convenience is a broad term, though. So what does that really mean? Well, it means that the bikes need to be close to people's origin. People don't like to walk more than 250 meters, seems to be the threshold. Anything longer than 250 meters, and people don't see bike share as an option. It also needs to have a place that you can end the trip close to their final destination. It also needs to be an attractive price. There is some hygiene issues that I uncovered during my research, because Australia has a mandatory helmet law, so it's a legal requirement to wear a helmet, which has made bike share less attractive than it would have been otherwise. But people talk to me, this was well before COVID-19, people talk to me about the concern that they had for wearing a helmet from a hygiene perspective. So especially when you haven't seen what the other person looks like that was using the helmet before, people have kind of a worst case scenario in their mind, and they don't want to put something on their head that someone else was using earlier in the day. So shared helmets really brought up that hygiene issue, but I think some of that translates over to COVID-19 as well. The other really big thing from a psychological perspective that is central to people's decision about whether they would use bike share or not is the quality of the bicycle infrastructure. So there's a very strong preference for people to ride in an environment that has either it's car-free environment, so it's a protected bike lane or a bike path, or it's a low-speed environment with low volumes of motor vehicle traffic and an absence of heavy vehicles. So trucks and lorries really create a problem for the vast majority of people if they were to consider using a share bike. Now, e-bikes help to overcome some of that. So e-bikes make the value proposition to a potential user more compelling. That's both from a safety perspective. People feel more comfortable riding, they feel safer riding an e-bike than a regular bike. They feel like they can keep up with traffic easier. They can start up from a standing start and reach a cruising speed quicker, which makes them feel safer. And they're not as wobbly if they're going up a hill, for instance. So there are some of the factors that I think is really important. But one of the really big things, especially as India emerges from the lockdown and businesses start to open up again and people start moving around a lot more, is being able to provide those. There might be, in some cities, they're calling them pop-up bike lanes. They're temporary bike lanes that use very light infrastructure, so they don't worry about concrete or stone or anything like that. It's really plastic bollards and other temporary traffic management devices that can be rolled out overnight in order to create the space for people to feel comfortable cycling. So COVID's one health issue, but getting run over by a car is also a health issue that a lot of people are thinking about in the back of their mind when they're trying to decide what mode of transport to take. And moving from public transport to cycling will be facilitated to a much greater degree if the streets provide the level of protection that meets people's minimum standards of safety. And whilst for people that cycle every day, that maybe they don't think about it as much, but for the majority of people that don't cycle every day, that are looking to make that decision of how are they going to get to work, how are they going to do the things that they need to do when formerly they use public transport, the bike will only become a compelling value proposition for people once the infrastructure is there to support it. So I would encourage you all to talk to your government representatives about the need for providing that safe infrastructure, which so many cities are doing around the world at the moment.
Yeah, Dr. Fleischman, that's one of the most important points. And I would again like to just come to our analyst this point about infrastructure. In India, as it is, we don't have dedicated infrastructure for bicycling in a lot of places. And do you see this as a major challenge in the micromobility business, particularly specific to say, bicycle sharing?
Sorry, is that a question for me?
No, I would request.
Sorry, to the panel.
Challenge, yeah, definitely. People don't want to venture out, on a busy traffic route, and where there is a threat that any motorbike or any of the bus is coming to hit him, because obviously the cycle speed is less than any other bike. So infrastructure, there is a dire need of infrastructure in all the cities wherever we want to have a public bicycle sharing system. So yeah, I mean, some governments are doing it, some governments are not doing it, some are at a planning stage, but we are yet to see an action on this. So it's very important part. It plays a really important part for people.
Okay, sir. Gagi, you were saying something?
Yeah, so what I was saying is the smart city area of Pune, which is the on Baner Balewadi area, that has a very beautiful infrastructure when it comes to the cycling lane and everything. So they have dedicated cycle track, marked on the roads, as well as they have created a separate space where the people can cycle. And similar initiatives have been taken in some parts of Mumbai as well. So if you happen to visit the BKC area, that too has a separation done. But unfortunately, the conditions in India, maybe the weather conditions or, the fear in the people is so much, talking about cycling and maybe, on the same road where you have a speeding vehicle which goes at a speed of 60 or 65 kilometers minimum, and then you are on a vehicle which you are at, below 25 kilometers per hour speed. So the fear and the thought of safety and security is so high that people avoid using these kind of transports, and hence these are now more of a parking space than the cycle track right now. So there are other cities as well, like I guess pre-COVID there was a test done in Gurgaon, which was more of that DLF area, which the test was done. So they had placed the bollards on the road, actually using the low speed lane, and how many were using the other side. So for all the cyclists or all the e-rickshaws even, which have a speed of less than 30 kilometers per hour, so segregation and a proper infrastructure would be really, really helpful.
And the main thing is mindset. The bicycles riders are still, taken as a bicycle is taken as a poor man's vehicle. So the mindset with other people is that why should someone go faster than me even if you're riding faster than anybody else? So the mindset needs to be changed. Yeah.
So another thing that we need to learn as Indians is respect bicyclists, which is very, very much needed in the current situation. So it's not like a bicyclist is competing with one on a high-speed motor vehicle, but definitely he is making an effort. Talking about the environment, he is making an effort to a better and a sustainable future.
I'm a cyclist. I ride about 40-45 kilometers on a daily basis. In a weekend, about 100 kilometers. So we see a change. Whenever you go to a place where you're riding, and if it is 9:30 a.m., people start coming along with you, and they say, "Boss, how much this bike cost? And why do you ride? How many kilometers you have done?" So whenever you say, "Okay, I have done 50 kilometers or 70 kilometers," they don't believe, and they say, "Oh, it's a cycle guy." So that mindset needs to be changed. And the day that respect comes for bicycle, and then we are the winner that day.
Right. So probably I bring some pessimism to the optimistic folks over here. I don't think from an infrastructure point of view, India is gonna be there anytime soon over the next decade when it comes to cyclists, right? Because essentially we are, from a transportation perspective, we lag the demand, right? From the supply side of it. So as soon as you build a road, you just induce the demand over there for all the motorcyclists, and which essentially means is that the cyclists definitely will not find a place for themselves on the road. For a country like India, obviously we disregard many of the traffic rules, which also means is that motorcyclists also occupy your pedestrian lanes, right? Forget your cycle lanes. Which is also why, including people like me, right? When we use, let's say, bikes like Yulu Miracle, they are essentially used where the speed of a person who is walking is far higher than all the motored vehicles. Okay, that is the only place where your pedal bikes or pedal assist e-bikes will be used, because you could go faster than all the other cars and bikes on the road on the footpaths, right? So that is on the one side. The second side is obviously we are a tropical country. Either it is too hot or it's raining. People can't travel longer distances on pedaled bicycles, right? Until unless you have pleasant climates, it's almost impossible to go farther than 2.5 kilometers. And that is why it is still a poor man's conveyance rather than middle class asset, right? When it comes to a bicycle. Obviously, for health conscious guys, it's niche. You will have all your geared cycles with carbon fiber frames, which will cost you like 20-30K, which is not what obviously you're going to put on the road, right? So all of this bringing to the fore is unit economics on a pedal bike, which don't make sense. Until unless you are doing a $10 pop, until unless you are doing like 6 to 10 rides a day, it doesn't make any sense from unit economics point of view for a pedal bicycle, right? Which is why the movement away from a lot of players like us, from a pedal bicycle to electric bike, where you are definitely competing with any other motored bike over there. Your speeds are not less than 50-60 kmph. Obviously, and from an effectiveness perspective, right? This is we are competing with ICE engines. Maintenance costs are far lower. Pilferages doesn't exist from a fuel perspective. There is nothing called refueling. Rebalancing is the only bit that we try to solve for in terms of how I incentivize people from A to B, rebalancing us very dynamically. Where the demand exists, I put the assets back. So that is how I view how we are moving forward effectively. And if you look at all the pivots that have happened, anybody globally, more or less, this consolidation is happening. We are not going to be a place where 5 or 10 of private ventures are going to flourish. At best, this will be a 3 or 4 player market. All this consolidation will happen. Either you will perish or prevail. And a lot of private ventures. I know for a fact that not many guys over here are profitable, right? In that sense, there is a lot of money that is being pumped in. To break even in this sort of a business, you need either public money, as I was mentioning, either you go and tender it out and depend on governments subsidizing your money, or make sense for unit economics for a consumer, right? To take the same example, Yulu bike cost $10 for half an hour. I spend $5, okay, on a private player. From Indiranagar Metro to my office is roughly about 2 kilometers, which is what I would like to pedal. But obviously, $10 is too heavy for me. I just pay $5. A private player like a van is just standing there at any point in time. Okay, they're very dynamic in terms of catching the people who are just walking off the metro. You pay $5 and you have traveled these 2 kilometers. So whatever is the pedal bicycle that is gonna try to address the demand is also being addressed by other guys. E-trikes are there, probably NCR, Delhi, all these guys. You will see a lot of these shared autos, e-rickshaws, all of these guys, which are very, very nominal amount, right? This is where you're competing with in terms of where your customer base is coming from, right? It's not making unit economics for people. Obviously, there are a lot of guys who are still flourishing at $10 a pop, but this is not something that's going to be sustainable in terms of unit eco, right? So electric bikes definitely is the way to go, but obviously it's slightly different kind of ball game when it comes to capital investments versus pedal bike. That's something that we will see, will continue to see to evolve. So I'm probably jumping into the next bit as well. I think Elliot just left us. So when it comes to the emerging business models, this is how it's gonna emerge in terms of the shift of the industry towards electric bike, which makes much more sense. I'm talking only about the private capital that is moving away, not the public investment. That is still gonna address how the government wants to shape this part of the transportation infrastructure. For all the private infra is definitely gonna move away from pedal bikes towards electric bikes and different kinds of form factors, right? More and more towards a form factor which will definitely address slightly longer use cases. And what definitely this particular pandemic has thrown at us is that the form factor which were okay for kilometers odd or 10 kilometers odd is definitely not going to be suitable for the next 1 to 2 years, right? Till the point in time people get a vaccine or any concrete treatment in place. This is the new normal, right? We are already in there. Though there is a denial that people still think that wearing a gloves on the hand or wearing a face mask will keep them safe. That's not the reality, right? As soon as you step out, you're obviously there are a lot of idiots out there who will be risky to you, right? Irrespective of how much care you take personally. So when it comes to the emerging models, I think definitely I will agree to, I think Atul was mentioning that there is a lot of indigenization that's going to happen. The lots that we were using on the bikes are like 4,000 to 5,000 a pop, even after you import it from China. I don't think it is a problem of technology. The chipset can be manufactured. There are a lot of EMS manufacturers in India as well who are comparable to China, right? It's not about the chipset. I think it is about the manufacturing indigenization that has to happen. It's not about technology indigenization, right? That's already there. We are the largest exporter of technology in the world. That's not the issue. But when it comes to manufacturing, if you just pick up the lock, it's quite heavy, right? It has been made rugged, especially to prevent vandalism, right? To just get that metal work in place in India, you're gonna struggle a lot. Even now, there are a lot of players who had approached us saying that, hey, did you guys, because you had put 15,000, 20,000 bikes on the road, probably you would have found a vendor. We are interested. A lot of foreign markets, like people from Japan and Korea, players there were approaching us. And when we told them that there is no player in India who has set up a manufacturing line, at best they will give you the technology line, but manufacturing will still have to happen from China. That is the current reality. Okay, so that is why probably there is a good amount of new business model that can come in terms of how much of manufacturing can be localized. The second bit obviously is new kinds of materials, right? There is a lot of antimicrobial treatment as well as surfaces. Okay, there is a lot of material sciences that has gone in when it comes to what sort of handlebar protection mechanism that you can use, as well as the seat cover materials. I think this is also going to be something that's going to emerge when it comes to giving the social proof to our prospective customers, right? In which there is probably 50% or 80% of a risk that can be avoided in terms of new materials. That is one other emerging form of how the business models will change. One other thing which I already covered is dynamism in how you rebalance and how you go closer towards the customer need, as Elliot was also mentioning. How do I ensure that I am not more than 250 meters away from where exactly the customer needs the service at, right?
Yeah.
There is also a lot of indigenization and localization that is happening on the bike side. Obviously, there are very well-known players like Ather, but obviously it's not made for fleet operators, including the first model S350, S450 that these guys had put on the road. We were in touch with them saying that, hey, are you anytime soon going to come into that? But obviously their investors on their board is more towards the B2B retail players than B2B to B2B or B2B to C kind of investments yet. Probably they're going to come sometime soon in the next 12 to 18 months on a fleet model. That being said, there is a lot of indigenization that's happening in charging facilities, both battery as well as battery charging stations, which can be operated, which can be put on the road. There are a lot of players like, let's say, Chetan Maini, who started your Reva car, right, which is one of the foremost electric asset that has been put on the road. He started another venture of his own, which is working exactly towards this. In how do I put a charging infra on the road, including portable batteries and swappable batteries, right? And how do I give mechanisms of payment as well as swapping by users themselves rather than putting again people on the road, right? So these are all the new emerging business models that are going to come in. We obviously see a lot of activity that's going to happen in the electric side. A lot of oil marketing companies, OMCs, right? HPCL, IOCL, BPCL, all these guys also venturing into this. A lot of power discoms like NTPC entering this market, saying that, okay, can we work with you folks on providing this electric charging infra? Obviously, just for bike, it doesn't make sense. It is definitely going to be a market for, when it comes to urban conglomerates, it's going to be a market for two-wheelers and three-wheelers put together. So the interchangeability is going to play a very big role. That is also how it's going to shape up when we look forward. If there is a single swappable battery on a bike or on an e-bike, can it be a modular facility on an e-rickshaw that a combination of two or three of the same shape modular batteries can go into the electric bikes or not, right? Or the portable battery charging infra has, let's say, 20-30% suited for the bikes and the remaining portion suited for the electric rickshaws and electric autos, right? That is one bit that we are seeing a lot of significant interest in. And when it comes to four-wheelers, which again, we are the largest player when it comes to electric four-wheelers that have been put out there. We have roughly about 500 electric cars that are flying. Obviously, they are also competing with the same use case that are there, slightly longer distances, probably about 60, 80, 120 kind of kilometers for instance use cases. There also there is a lot of significant interest in players when it comes to electric charging infra. And how do we bring in public and private players together and get this catch-22 solved for, right? Without charging infra, the assets are not going to be there. The demand is not going to be there. And without demand, a lot of private capital is not going to chase the very heavy investments with a 10 to 15 year horizon. So these are all the emerging models that's going to shape the overall industry and the ecosystem in the next 1 to 2 years, at the very least, and obviously on a broader scale about 5 years.
So as Mr. Reddy rightly said, that there's a lot of work being done by the other players and as well as the government. So yes, Niti Aayog has been pivotal, has played a pivotal role here in playing and bringing together all the vendors and all the people who are interested in setting up that infrastructure. And it would be not only in definitely the pilot will start with a pilot project somewhere, and then that would slowly spread to other metro cities and everything. So yes, they are also trying to get the players involved and set this charging infra. So the idea is to definitely start with two-wheelers and then three-wheelers and then four-wheelers, and create a sustainable environment and sustainable ecosystem for India.
Great point. Reddy was explaining, actually, we have covered substantially some of the points about the emerging business models. So we can come back to that. Maybe this was running a little bit short of time. I would just go on to the fourth agenda point very quickly. We have to have some views from you regarding bicycle sharing and especially use of electric bicycles in a rural or semi-urban context. If you take into account peri-urban areas, what do you feel about it? Is there a workable model where you don't have a lot of demand? Maybe single hub station. That is what we are experimenting with. One micro station per village. So a person takes the bike from there, returns it there, and demand is less. So we're just trying to see if managing a small fleet, which can be probably serviced by a local entrepreneur, like a local cycle shop. So a person who is using a ICE two-wheeler instead decides to go for an electric bike and probably for a longer time, just returns it back to the same shop in his village.
Correct.
Does it the model, and what are the challenges?
Very valid question. I was pondering over this over the last night, right? Many of the private capital, VCP capital chases always the urban densities rather than the rural, let's say, demand. I hail from a very small town in southern part of Andhra Pradesh, right? Wherein from the village to the nearest public transport, okay? Forget anything else, just the public bus is roughly about 5 to 8 kilometers, okay? And there are a lot of these villages that exist, right? And all of these are being catered to today, as it stands today, with what you call as the shared auto, right? That is very prevalent even in urban conglomerates, where you see that the buses are traveling in a very specific route. The minivans are also in very specific routes, which are like more like a 20-25 seater ones. And then there is a lot of these 5 to 10 seater capacities, and these are traveling very, very short distances, 5, 10, 15 kilometer distances, right? This is exactly the same kind of use case that you are talking, right? When it comes to actual use case, right? The people who are moving all across are not just moving alone. Okay, they are also moving along with some bit of goods and luggage. Okay, this is also an important point which we miss when it comes to urban movement versus rural movement. Okay, they always have something in their hand. Could be their produce, could be the implements that they are using, could be the batteries that they want to repair, could be a motor pump that they are moving across, the electrical winding has shot off or whatever, right? So all of this cannot be catered to with your typical, let's say, pedal bike or a normal electric bike, okay? If you put in the electric bike that we are talking about, that Zoomcar has put in, definitely that will still cater to. It can take a capacity of roughly about additional 50 to 70 kgs. Which is amenable enough, okay, for these guys. All they would need is probably a good amount of, let's say, luggage carriers or hooks or whatever, right, for them to hang all their stuff. But apart from that, yeah, form factor wise, it still makes sense. And one other important thing, as you rightly pointed out, is it's not dispersed. A and B are more or less fixed, right? The A is, let's say, the village. There are maybe B, C, D, E, F. That's it, right? There are 4 or 5 points. More often than not, there are only 1 or 2 points that these guys are going to, okay, which is the next big mandal office or let's say the village panchayat or whatever, right? So always there is a to and fro that is happening, okay? The only point is that the overall number of rides that are happening are probably limited to not more than about 4 a day, okay, all said and done. Okay, if you are expecting that A to B that has gone in, the vehicle is coming back from B to A, That's not going to happen till it's a lunchtime or whatever, right? And then probably one more is going to happen after lunch, and that's it. One more in the evening, right? So for a private investment to actually make a dent in this, the paying capacity is not so high. When it comes to only 4 rides, you're going to ask this guy to pay up anywhere between $30 to $50, whereas you are competing with roughly about $20 for the same kind of ride, $20 to $25. Okay, it is almost 100% markup. This is where probably the governments can offset a lot much more of investment. Okay, roughly anywhere between 30% to 50% of the asset cost is tied up in the batteries. When you pick up cars, it is roughly about 35%. When you pick up bikes, it is roughly about 50%. Okay, if you come up with a mechanism of the capital that is being raised for the batteries and how the asset in itself is looked at in terms of balance sheets, the battery is unpacked from the asset is capitalized and financed separately, and the battery is unpacked and probably cross-subsidized by the government, and including the charging infra. I definitely see there is a huge scope. You can just take probably your top 20,000 villages and you just got captive audience all across, right? That is one thing. The second thing is the ruggedness of this. Okay, there is going to be a mafia, which is the local, let's say, auto guys or whatever. At the first instance of you putting unmanned dockless or dock version of these bikes, the next day they are going to disappear. Okay, or let's say the hardware found out, right? Which is also one thing is where you need to rope in all these folks and make them part of the solution, right? The micro entrepreneur should be that who is operating those routes today, right? That is one. Second one is the form factor has to be very rapid. Okay, we have seen a lot of these versions that have gone through. Let's say take the recent example of jump bicycles. There is a version of 5.5 that is coming up. Very very rugged form factors, right? But still, much of the design has been done only for urban roads. Okay. Even, if somebody designs for urban India, I think it is more or less mimics nowadays the rural roads. Not very great as such, but yeah, all said and done, you need to be touch-proof, waterproof to a very great extent, IP65 rating or whatever that you can put in. More or less, the hardware is almost at that part. When it comes to tires and the frames, they'll have to be very rugged. That is the second problem that you definitely need to solve. These are the two big things. In fact, 3 big things that I spoke about, right? How do you bring in the kind of players or entrepreneurs that you play in? What sort of unpacking that you do in terms of financing the assets? Who plays what role? And the third one being what sort of asset that you put on the road. These are the challenges that I foresee for both semi-urban as well as rural areas.
Adding to this, the VGF will play a very major role because now the urban cities also are, the government is giving VGF. So semi-urban and rural will definitely need a VGF factor, which is going to be subsidized as well as a full impact. So, and the owners should be on the mandal or panchayat kind of, anybody who has it, wherein they will understand, this property belongs to me, so that I do not, I should take care of this particular bike which is going to solve my issue. So VGF is going to play a very big role in the semi-urban area.
Yeah, Gargi, can you have some quick views on that?
Along with what Mr. Reddy and Mr. Srivastav just mentioned, that the VGF will be playing a good role, and also that you cannot leave the bikes unmanned, considering the chances of vandalism that we might have. So what ULU is also trying to do here is we are trying to find local business partners, maybe someone from the village or someone from the semi-rural area to be a part of it. And we could give them a number of bicycles or e-scooters, however is the demand. And the person would have an ownership to that, right? So when one has an ownership, he would take care of the assets and he would run the services properly. So this is something that we are also planning, and like other players as well, we are mostly catering to the tier 1 cities and the metro cities. But yes, talking about tier 2 cities, they do not have a very, very strong use cases because the population is not that much. The infrastructure is better compared, I would say. The congestion on the roads is not negative, but it's not that high of congestion as well. So given all the good conditions, tier 2 city does not have that much demand as compared to the other big cities. So definitely we would like to solve the cities which have the greater issues first, and then definitely go to the tier 2 city.
Yeah.
In addition of the above, all these suggestions, I would like to recommend that CSR funds and institutional funds should be there for rural and semi-urban towns. And we can also ask the PSUs to promote these type of services in rural areas. So we can get the best results without investing the money from the private players. We can get the results and we can promote these type of services in rural areas. So we can should include in our projects this PSUs, CSR funds, and institutional funding should be there.
Yeah, Atul, to your point, I think that's where the other point that I was mentioning, right? Many of the discoms and let's say oil marketing companies are trying to play in the electric charging side. This is exactly the mandate that they have from the government, that X portion of your overall expenditure has to go towards building a charging infra, right?
Yeah.
So until unless it is mandated, I don't think it's going to come from the pure good heart that will go and do some good to the society.
Yeah, they're playing on the CSR part, right? So basically,
Right.
that is what they're using it. Yeah.
So Aniket, what's your take on this? Is it a workable thing? I mean, you have a lot of high-tech models, and think of a scenario where maybe not a lot of people will have access. I mean, of course, smartphones have penetrated a lot. Maybe yes, smartphones will be accessible, but you are talking of them using an app where you have to source where you have to kind of book the cycle. Okay, so probably those things will not work. I mean, you will need to have a human interface in these kind of scenarios. Okay, so it's like a low tech involving a human interface. So is it a workable thing with low demand?
Yes, as Reddy sir have mentioned earlier, regarding the infrastructure and the mobile application feasibility for the rural and semi-urban areas. So the thing is, people are quite aware about the situation in the rural areas. They usually have their own vehicles to commute from one station to other station, and coming to the application side, they are not a lot of inclined towards using the application side of it. But yes, since the supply, there is a concept in economics which says supply creates its own demand. Unless and until there is a supply, the demand will automatically be coming out from that particular area, or where the fleet have been situated. So the single point of contact station will not be feasible at compare at as from the experience that we have in the operation side, where only the single point of contact is same, and it does not create kind of connectivity from another connecting stations. So let's suppose, if you want to check, or if you want to analyze the feasibility of any infrastructure within any rural or semi-urban area, where the feasibility is good for the infrastructure like this or not. So I say there has to be more than 10 station and connecting satellite station have to be situated at that particular place to find out the feasibility in the longer run. And the better planning, survey, and provide better result for setting up the station is very necessary for those stations. And from the business side, I say there will be a lot of innovations coming out from the operator side, and Bhopal is one of the best example from the infrastructure side, where you have already created a lot of infrastructure for supporting the PBS, and you have also made out the lanes and the proper cycling infrastructure for the city of Bhopal. And similarly, there are many other cities where the municipalities are coming up with similar projects, like the recent project that we have seen is Guwahati, where they want to implement PBS along with the bicycle lanes, but due to restriction in the funds, a lot of operators does not see a lot of growth in that. But still, I see there will be a lot of funds coming in from the government side as well, a few months down the line, and government will see a lot of potential coming up and lot of funds will be sanctioned to that particular project. And coming to the business model, I see the PBS by its nature is not a profitable venture, as I can say. So what we have done with the co-rights is we have lot of revenues coming from the advertising, naming rights campaign, public events, etc. to support the operational expenditure. Because the thing is, PBS is itself demand lot of liquid and cash in hand to support day-to-day activities like tech and software side of the business. Most of the operators have been working on different data sets as well, where they're trying to analyze the service operations and expect to predict future possibilities based on the past data they have calculated. And with this report, I want to show you one thing. If I can present it here or not. So this is the study that we have done with the system. Just a minute.
As Aniket brings it up, I'll just add one point. Government is not in a role of providing services, and whenever it does take up that mantle, we know it for a fact that it bungles up greatly, right? So pick up any road transport corporation of any of the states or discoms. All of them would be loss-making ventures, right? So I don't think government should continue to play that role. Obviously, the infrastructure is where their forte is, and they should continue to focus there in building the infrastructure and give way to private players play a lot better role, make the economics work for the private players so that they can make it a profitable venture rather than government in itself coming up and putting up PBS system for all of these in place and
not in that way, but the infrastructure side, like yes, please go ahead.
And the other point that you are making, right, at most of the investments that go in building these infrastructures are also again a very pessimistic view that I take is more or less I wash. I used to stay in Akriti Eco City. Professor would know where it is. And the bicycle lane is from there to Mandideep, right, on the highway. And as soon as it laid and the inauguration happened, I did travel on the same road, and it's built over storm drains. Okay, and most of the drain covers have been opened. So it causes more harm than good that many of these infrastructure causes, right? Probably it is going to remain for 1 month, 2 months, or 6 months, and then as soon as it goes bad, there will be no maintenance of that. So all said and done, I still believe much of this ecosystem has to be built by the private players. When it comes to it, and the move towards providing these services is towards electric bikes in a form factor which is usable in the Indian context. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
I
Moment, just for all our panelists, Mr. Srivastav has to leave, I guess, for some meeting which is lined up. So I would just, request the others. We would love to take a look at that slide which Aniket was presenting. So, Mr. Srivastav, if you are lined up for a meeting, sir, you can leave, sir. Thank you for your insights. We're very much benefited by your insights, and thank you for joining us at such short notice.
No, thanks. For this kind of platform, I know a lot of people now. So with this, let's make this more popular. So thanks for having me. Thank you very much, everyone.
Definitely be in touch, sir, about this, and what we are trying to do is we're trying to come up with some kind of a framework, as I say, some kind of a checklist, for self-assessment of, say, bike sharing systems, okay, to deal with, for assessing their resilience in such situations, or say for operating in unfamiliar territory. Okay, so that kind of a thing that we are trying to come up with. Maybe we'll just share it with you, the main points which come out,
Anytime.
and just rating of different aspects. So, sir,
Anytime. Thank you. Thanks.
I'll just the others engage for just maybe some minutes more. I know we are beyond schedule, so just would like to take a look at this slide and maybe just last few words from the others. I think, can you just present that again?
So yes, these are the two slides that we have find out later last year. So this is the kind of a usage pattern. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. It's up, Ankit.
So this is kind of the usage pattern that we have find out with the e-bikes, where we have seen 6:1 ratio between e-bikes and normal bikes, and the trip duration that we have counted is 4 kilometers, whereas in the normal cycle they have drive around like one and a half kilometer per ride, but with the e-bikes there are closing around 3.5 to 4 kilometers per ride. This is the data for per ride here. And similar that we have accounted is for the targeted audience that we have seen during the research that we have done with the system little last year. That is hourly usage pattern that we have accounted for 250 e-bikes that we have newly launched in Kurites in Thane, where we have seen usage hour pattern on the weekend and weekdays, and lot of other activities that we have keep on doing keep doing on a weekly basis, where we account for where all these usages and the rides where I've been used be taking the ride from one station to another station. So these things are being weekly identified and accounted for, and we used to maintain a weekly report for each of these things, and the developments on a monthly basis. So I have a lot of research that you would be looking for, and I would be love to share with you as well. So we'll see about it.
We will definitely keep in touch about this. Very interesting, those were very interesting stats out there. We'll definitely keep in touch, and just respecting the time for all of our panelists and for all of our viewers as well, those who have tuned in live. We had some internet glitches in the beginning and we're not able to stream it. So we had to change the links a couple of times, and that took a little bit of time, but we are going to, and we have the recording of this, so we would put it back again on our channel, and we'll share the link with you, so you can probably share it in your circles, and some maybe concluding words from each of you in the next couple of minutes, probably. I'll just go to Gargi now. So overall, what's the take on this?
So thank you for having us over here, and I guess it was a very fruitful discussion that we had. So what we learned is during the time of COVID, I guess the situation is similar, more or less similar for all of us. And post-COVID, what we can do is something that I take from here. So not only I believe all the players would be on the same line, like how we can operate not only in the major cities, the metro cities, but also the tier 2 cities, and how we can seek government support in having the opportunity. That's it from my end. Thank you.
Yeah. So coming now to Mr. Jain. So sir, what are your concluding words on this?
So I have learned so many things from this panel, and thank you for the big part of this one. So in this respect, Aniket last said that that is very valid point, that any sharing system cannot be successful without the pick and drop facility. So in rural areas and semi-urban areas, we need to find out some place where we should have a facility of pick and drop kind facility. Either Reddy is also saying that right point, that we will not get the too much trips out of one or two stations, more than 1 or 2 stations, but we cannot achieve the desired results without having the number of stations. So these are the two controversial things we have to work out on this, and so many other things. Infrastructure, we have to work on infrastructure with authorities simultaneously. As the operator, this is our responsibility to make the requirement of infrastructure very clear for cyclists and pedalists. And this is being the operator, this is our responsibility. So thank you guys. Thanks a lot.
So Mr. Reddy, your concluding remarks on this, sir?
Yeah, so what the pandemic has brought out is the best, at least when it comes to the Indian mentality of figuring out the solutions when they are the toughest to solve for. As the saying goes, right, if you prove a business model in India, it's immediately scalable anywhere else in the world, right? There are no other problems that exist in the world that you wouldn't have faced in India. So I think most of the ecosystem is poised for a very exciting time forward. This is the time for personal use cases. self-drive use cases more than just the personal use case. That is also why we see and are very bullish on both the cars business as well as the electric bikes business. We are also very bullish on slightly long-term view on the distances in itself. The last mile connectivity and the micro mobility is more or less dead in the very classical sense. All the investments globally have been paid back. More often than not, many of the millions of dollars of the investments have gone down the drain when it comes to just micro mobility as a sector. So now it is not just about micro mobility; it is more about personal mobility on a self-drive basis. That is what is going to look like in the near term. For us. So that's from my side. Obviously, I'll be free for any of you guys to approach. Probably have the largest amount of treasure trove on the data. We have put more than 15,000 bicycles across more than 15 to 20 cities before we paid down on all of those. We operate currently across 45 cities across India with more than 8,000 cars, which in itself shows us a lot much more use cases. We will soon come up with many more use cases, both from electric cars, electric bikes, as well as in-city use cases. You will see all of these in the next 2 to 3 months. Probably still not yet out in the public forum, so I'm not sharing them widely over here. But in the next 1 quarter, you will see a lot many more of these use cases that we will put there on the road. And probably we'll also be the industry leaders in leading many of these infrastructural problems that people, at least the private players, are going to solve for when it comes to the ecosystem of personal self-drive mobility.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And just one last couple of words from Aniket. So what's your opinion on this, Aniket?
Yes, so I see there is huge demand coming up in the short run, and I see also there is an emerging business model which will be effective in case of India, where we have seen in 2018 where the doctors and the dog bike came up, and the new models new models were integrated with the IoT and IT softwares. So I see there will be a huge demand coming up from this side, and the innovation will be coming from the data side of it, where the data and the right usage data, the behavioral data of a user and the right pattern will be analyzed by the operators to identify which aspect of the business is more identifiable. So let's see, those data can be useful for allied sectors like healthcare, traffic department, insurance, and etc. So a lot of emerging business are going to be there in this segment. Let's see how the operators are going to tackle these challenges few years down the line. Might be. Let's see. Few operators will go out and put up some new wallet business or insurance business, or they have collaborated with the banks and the insurance, where they have been sharing the data of users, where the insurance companies are coming up and watching the CBILs coming out and the healthy prospect of the business, and the insurance will be premiumized according to that report. So a lot of things have to be seen a few years down the line. Let's see how the operators are going to face it. So that is it from my side. So see.
The data, that point on data was very interesting. Definitely, that's something we are also doing with our project. The experiment that we are trying to do, rather, I mean, it's stalled at the moment. But the moment we get our hands on the cycles, would love to get the data from our, from the field for our project. And yes, that's a very important point. Mr. Srivastava was also talking about that, regular monitoring, churning the data, trying to see, I mean, what's happening, the behavior, studying the behavior on a real-time basis if possible, and tracking it regularly. That's a very important point.
Hey, Prem, before you close off, I think I'll just leave some parting words. If any of I think Gargi can attest to this, probably she is best placed. But if any of the business models are hinging on monetizing the data, I would caution them against that. There is no way that the data is getting monetized in the medium term, even for the next 5 years or so, or probably even to 10 years for that matter. When it comes to bikes, obviously it's more usage data, but when it comes to cars, we also look at what sort of driving patterns that the users exhibit, right? At what engine RPMs are these guys driving, which gear, what is the clutch usage, are they over driving the clutch, are they bumping over the speed humps, all of that, right? We measure huge amounts of data, okay? We measure it at 10 hertz rate, meaning there are almost 200 data points coming out from the cars at 10 data points per second, okay? This is the kind of data that billions of records that we do. When it comes to insurance players or health players or any other players, we have been at the forefront of it in going to the industry and saying that, hey, can we monetize this? Can we look at differential premiums and all of that? India is very nascent in all of this. IRDA is very heavy in terms of regulating the insurance industry. Very recently, last quarter, they opened up something called as a sandbox, in which, in a very small fashion, industry players, insurance players can go and experiment with players like us. But all said and done, if any of you guys are thinking that data is going to be there to be made money on, I would caution all of you guys against that. Okay, when you frame your P&Ls.
Thank you so much. So I would like to conclude this.
Definitely.
Few quick words on. Just a small vote of thanks. I would just like to propose a vote of thanks to our director, N. Sridharan, who made this possible. His constant encouragement for organizing kind of interactive sessions with the industry has really inspired us, the faculty here in our school. I would like to thank Dr. Shuli Mitra, the Dean of Academic Affairs in our school, who's coordinating the organization of these kind of sessions. Then I would like to thank my research assistants on the project, Anil and Vigneshwar. That Anil has been handling the publicity for this and also the technical aspect of organizing this entire show. And I would also like to thank all the technical staff of SPA Bhopal for making this possible, even in these trying circumstances. And thanks to all our panelists. I would really like to thank you immensely for joining at such short notice and sharing such deep insights with all of us. We're all very deeply benefited, and I would come back to you, sir, and Gagi and Aniket, Mr. Reddy, Mr. Srivastava, and also touch base with Dr. Fishman also. I would like to share whatever we have learned from this in a concise format, and probably like to get views on that, some kind of a rating on, some broad points, how important you feel those things are. So in order for us to come up with some kind of a checklist. So as a research institute, that would be our contribution. So thanks a lot, and we'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Prem.
you.
Bye.
Okay, Anil, we are stop recording. इसमें and just a minute on this thing Google Meet.